The leather-bound recipe book sat heavily in my hands, its pages worn from decades of use. Sarah's last gift to me, passed on just days before cancer took her at 35. While our wealthy family lived in mansions and drove luxury cars, Sarah and I had chosen a different path. She became a small-town baker, and I pursued my dream of becoming a chef. "Promise me you'll use these recipes, Emma," she'd whisper from her hospital bed. "They're more valuable than anyone knows." I'm Emma Chen, and until 6 months ago, I was just another struggling chef in San Francisco. After graduating from culinary school, I'd opened a small neighborhood restaurant called Homemade. Nothing fancy, just honest food made with love. Our parents and older siblings, successful business executives and lawyers, saw it as proof of our failure. Two daughters who play with food while their siblings run companies, Mom would say at family gatherings, her disappointment sharp enough to cut. The day everything changed started like any other. I was in my tiny restaurant kitchen, experimenting with Sarah's recipes. The book was extraordinary, not just for the recipes themselves, but for Sarah's meticulous notes in the margins. Complex flavor combinations, unexpected ingredient pairings, and techniques I'd never seen before. "Hey chef," Marcus, my sous chef, called out. "You need to see this." He pointed to the TV in a corner where a famous food critic was reviewing restaurants. I nearly dropped the bowl I was holding when I saw him describing an extraordinary sauce he tasted in Hong Kong. "This remarkable flavor," he said, "I've only encountered once before, at a small family restaurant in Beijing 20 years ago. The Chen family's imperial sauce. A closely guarded secret that died with the last chef. If anyone could recreate it, they'd have a culinary goldmine." My hands trembled as I opened Sarah's book to the recipe I'd been studying. There, in her careful handwriting, was a recipe titled Great-Grandmother's Imperial Sauce. Below it, Sarah had written, "Found in Great-Grandmother's Trunk. The original Chen family recipe from the Imperial Palace." Our great-grandmother had indeed been a cook in Beijing's Forbidden City before the revolution. She fled to America with nothing but her skills and apparently some very valuable recipes. But our status-obsessed family had buried that history, embarrassed by their humble culinary roots. I spent the next week perfecting the sauce. The ingredients were simple, but the technique was incredibly complex. When I finally got it right, the flavor was unlike anything I'd ever tasted, sweet, savory, and utterly unique. The annual Chen family reunion was approaching, held at my older brother Michael's Palo Alto mansion. I decided to bring some of my dishes, including the imperial sauce. Maybe finally, they'd see value in what Sarah and I had chosen to do with our lives. "Emma's here," my sister Victoria announced as I walked in carrying my containers. Still playing restaurant while the rest of us build real businesses. Michael, our oldest brother and CEO of a successful tech company, barely looked up from his phone. Mom hurried over, her China suit immaculate as always. "Darling, you didn't need to bring food. We have caterers." She eyed my containers with barely concealed disdain. "From La Cirque." I set up my dishes on a corner of the buffet, including the special sauce I'd made. As family members arrived, they naturally gravitated toward the catered food, avoiding my corner as if it might contaminate their designer clothes. Then Uncle James, always the family rebel, tried my sauce. His eyes widened. This is incredible. It reminds me of something I tasted years ago in Beijing." Suddenly, everyone wanted to try it. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Even Victoria forgot her usual disdain, asking for the recipe. "It's just something I've been working on," I said quietly, from Sarah's old recipe book. Mom froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Sarah's recipes? Where did she get them?" "Great-grandmother's trunk, apparently. There's lots of interesting things in that old book." "That book belongs to the family," Mom said sharply. "Sarah had no right to." "To what?" I interrupted. "To pass down her own grandmother's recipes? To value our real family history instead of the sanitized version you prefer?" The room fell silent. I could see the wheels turning in Michael's head as he tasted the sauce again. "You know," he said slowly, "with the right marketing, this could be worth millions. We should discuss acquiring your restaurant, Emma. Bring it into the Chen Group properly." I thought of Sarah, of her passion for authentic cooking, of her belief that food was about love, not profit. "The restaurant's not for sale, Michael, and neither are the recipes." "Don't be stupid," Victoria snapped. "You're a nobody running a tiny restaurant. We could make this huge." Like you made huge profits from great-grandmother's jade collection. I asked quietly. Everyone stiffened. Years ago, our parents had sold our great-grandmother's jade pieces for a fortune, pieces she wanted preserved in the family. That was different, Mom protested. We needed that money to build our position in society, to give you children opportunities, to erase our real heritage, you mean? I picked up Sarah's recipe book. Well, not this time. Sarah protected these recipes for a reason, and I'm going to honor that. As I turned to leave, Michael called out, "You're making a big mistake, Emma. That sauce could be worth millions with our backing." I paused at the door. It already is worth millions, Michael. You just don't know it yet. What I didn't tell them was that earlier that week, I'd received an interesting visitor at my restaurant, someone who recognized the imperial sauce immediately, someone whose offer would change everything. But I had no idea that my family was already plotting to take what they saw as rightfully theirs, or that Sarah had left me more than just recipes in that old book. The war for our great-grandmother's legacy was about to begin. The storm hit the next morning. I arrived at Homemade to find a crowd outside. Customers, food bloggers, and several TV crews. Overnight, a viral video of the famous food critic discovering my imperial sauce had exploded online. Chef Chen. A reporter thrust a microphone toward me. Is it true you've recreated the legendary imperial sauce? How did you discover the recipe? Before I could answer, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up. Michael stepped out, followed by two men in expensive suits. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced smoothly, I'm Michael Chen, CEO of Chen Group International and Emma's older brother. We're excited to announce that the imperial sauce and all Chen family recipes will soon be launched under a corporate umbrella. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? He gripped my arm, smile never wavering. Let's discuss this inside, sister dear. In my office, Michael's true colors emerged. The men with him were corporate lawyers, armed with intimidating stacks of documents. These recipes are Chen family intellectual property, Michael stated flatly. Mom and Dad have signed affidavits confirming they never gave Sarah permission to take great-grandmother's recipe book. As family head, I'm demanding its immediate return. Sarah found that book in great-grandmother's trunk, which was left to her specifically. A trunk of old clothes, Michael scoffed. Any valuable contents clearly weren't meant to be included. Besides, his smile turned predatory. How do you think health inspectors will react when they start receiving anonymous complaints about your kitchen? How long can a small restaurant survive repeated investigations? You're threatening me. I'm protecting our family legacy. You have until tomorrow to sign these papers transferring all rights to Chen Group. Don't make this difficult, Emma. After they left, I sank into my chair, Sarah's recipe book clutched to my chest. That's when I noticed something odd, a slight bulge in the book's leather backing. Carefully examining it under light, I found a hidden pocket. Inside was an old letter, written in our great-grandmother's elegant hand. My dearest granddaughter Sarah, I see in you what I see in few others, true love for our family's art. Not the money it brings, but the joy it creates. You remind me of my days in the imperial kitchen, before revolution and greed destroy everything. The recipes in this book are more than family secrets. They are our true legacy. The imperial sauce alone saved our family twice, once in Beijing when it bought our escape to America, and again in 1965, when its secret formula secured our future here. But there are those who would use these recipes for profit alone. That is why I entrust them to you, my quiet one who understands their real value. In the garden of our old home in Beijing lies proof of our history, documents that establish our original ownership of these recipes. I have arranged for copies to be kept safe with old friends. Protect our legacy, dear one. Money comes and goes, but true wealth lies in what we create with love. Your loving grandmother, Lin Chen. My hands trembled as I reread the letter. Sarah must have discovered this shortly before her illness. This wasn't just about recipes anymore. It was about our family's true history. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Wang, my elderly fish supplier, stood in the doorway. I saw the news, he said quietly, and I recognized that sauce. My grandfather was Imperial Kitchen staff too. My heart skipped. Mr. Wang, did your grandfather ever mention the Chen family? He smiled mysteriously. Come with me. There's something you should see. His tiny shop in Chinatown concealed a surprise, a hidden room filled with historical documents and photographs. And there, in a faded photograph from 1940, stood my great-grandmother in the imperial kitchen, proudly holding a sauce bowl. Your great-grandmother wasn't just any cook, Mr. Wong explained. She was the last official keeper of the imperial recipes. When she fled, she took them legally. They were her responsibility to protect. He handed me a stack of weathered documents. My grandfather kept copies of everything. The recipe ownership certificates, the official authorization, all proving your family's rightful claim. I was speechless. These documents weren't just history. They were ammunition. But while I was discovering our true legacy, my family was making their next move. Victoria had convinced our cousin David, a popular food blogger, to write a scathing review of Homemade, questioning the authenticity of our recipes. The war was escalating, and I needed help. That's when I remembered another note in Sarah's recipe book, mentioning someone named Master Chen in Hong Kong. No relation, but perhaps an ally. I had no idea that my search for help would uncover an even bigger secret, one that would shake our family to its core. I'd arrived in Hong Kong as the city was waking up, the morning air thick with humidity and possibility. Master Chen's restaurant was tucked away in an ancient building in Kowloon, its faded sign barely visible among the neon lights. Inside, an elderly man was teaching a young apprentice the precise way to fold dumplings. Without looking up, he said in perfect English, "I've been expecting you, Emma Chen. Sarah told you about me." He smiled, his eyes crinkling. Sarah told me many things, including what might happen after she was gone. He gestured to a private room. "Come, your family's story is longer than you know." Over tea served in delicate imperial porcelain, Master Chen revealed the truth. He wasn't just any chef. He was the grandson of the imperial kitchen's headmaster, and he'd been waiting decades for this moment. "Your great-grandmother and my grandfather made a pact," he explained, unlocking an ornate wooden chest. They knew the revolution would destroy centuries of culinary heritage, so they divided and protected the most precious recipes. He spread out ancient scrolls and photographs. "The imperial sauce you recreated. It's only the beginning. These recipes aren't just about food. They're about power. In the old days, these dishes were served only to emperors. They contain combinations of ingredients that affect mood, energy, even longevity. That's why Michael wants them so badly," I realized. "The commercial potential is worth billions," Master Chen nodded. "But there's something else you need to see." He played a video on his phone. Sarah's face filled the screen, recorded months before her death. "Emma, if you're watching this, you found Master Chen." Her familiar smile, though tired, warmed my heart. "There's something you need to know about our family." The truth hit like a thunderbolt. Our great-grandmother hadn't just been a cook. She'd been the illegitimate daughter of a royal concubine, raised in the imperial kitchen to protect her. The recipes were her birthright, passed down through generations of female chefs. "That's why I left you the book," Sarah continued. "In our family's history, it's always been the women who understood food's true power. Not as a commodity, but as a way to heal, to connect, to love." Master Chen handed me a USB drive. "This contains everything: historical proof of your lineage, documentation of the recipe's origins, and evidence of their scientific properties." Sarah prepared it all before she died. Back in San Francisco, I found my restaurant surrounded by protesters. Michael had hired them to carry signs questioning our food's authenticity. Victoria was giving interviews about family recipes stolen by an ungrateful sister. But I wasn't worried. I'd learned more than just history in Hong Kong. The next morning, at the emergency board meeting Michael had called for Chen Group's new authentic imperial cuisine line, I arrived early. The boardroom was packed with executives, lawyers, and one special guest. The Chinese cultural minister himself, invited by Michael to legitimize their claim to the recipes. Michael smiled triumphantly. "Emma, so nice of you to join us. We were just discussing the launch of our new product line." "Interesting," I replied calmly. "And what exactly are you launching?" "The Chen family's imperial recipes, of course. We have Mom and Dad's sworn statements about their ownership." I connected my laptop to the projector. "Let's talk about ownership." For the next hour, I presented the truth: documents, photographs, scientific analysis of the recipe's unique properties, and finally Sarah's video testimony. The cultural minister leaned forward, increasingly agitated. These recipes, he announced, are protected Chinese cultural heritage. Any attempt to commercialize them without proper authority would be problematic. Michael's face turned ash white. But our patents are invalid, I interrupted, because Sarah and I filed the proper cultural heritage protection documents years ago. These recipes can't be mass-produced or commercialized. They can only be passed down through certified training, exactly as they have been for centuries. Victoria jumped up. You planned this all along. You and Sarah protected our true legacy, I finished. And now I'm offering you all a choice. I laid out my proposal. Homemade would become a culinary training center, preserving traditional techniques and recipes. Any family member willing to learn properly to honor the traditions and history would be welcome. But, I added, no shortcuts, no mass production, no selling out our heritage for quick profits. The cultural minister nodded approvingly. The Chinese government would be very interested in supporting such a venture. As a cultural exchange program, perhaps. Michael slumped in his chair, defeated. His dreams of instant billions evaporating. Mom stood up slowly. The recipes, they really came from her? From the royal family? I handed her great-grandmother's photograph. From a woman who valued tradition over status, who believed food should bring people together, not drive them apart. Tears filled her eyes. I never knew, we never let her tell us. 1 year later, Homemade has transformed. We still serve traditional dishes, but we also train new chefs in the ancient techniques. Victoria, surprisingly, was the first to enroll in our program. Turns out she has a natural talent for dim sum. Michael focuses on the business side, but differently now, promoting cultural preservation rather than exploitation. Mom spends hours in the kitchen, finally learning the family stories she once dismissed. Yesterday, a young girl watched me teach the imperial sauce technique, just as great-grandmother once taught it in the palace kitchens. Does everyone get to learn the secret recipes? She asked. I smiled, remembering Sarah's words. The real secret isn't in the recipes. It's an understanding that the most precious things can't be bought or sold. They can only be passed down with love. Master Chin visits often, helping us maintain the old traditions while creating new ones. The cultural minister's endorsement has made us a bridge between culinary worlds. In my office, Sarah's recipe book sits in a special place of honor. But it's no longer just a book of recipes. It's a reminder that our true inheritance isn't measured in money or status, but in the wisdom, love, and traditions we choose to preserve and share. Sometimes the greatest wealth isn't what we gain, but what we protect. And sometimes the most powerful recipes aren't for food at all. They're for healing the bonds that break when we forget who we really are.